My name is Mayoral. I'm a journalist and I'm moderating this session. I'd kindly like to call on Mrs. Basita Michael, the CEO and founder of CRI magazine, the organizers of this first ever such debate, to kindly make an opening remark and then we will take the debate on the way. Thank you very much. Michael?
Ladies and gentlemen, all protocols observed. I must say that I was taken by surprise. I didn't know that I was going to make an opening statement. But I will seize this opportunity to do my best and to welcome you all to such a wonderful occasion. If you're wondering why Sarah magazine kicked off with this debate, that is the mayor's debate, that's because at Sarah we believe that the future that we're all hoping for does not only rest on the major decisions like the presidency and central government, but it's also about our capital city, Freetown. Presidents will go, presidents will change, different mayors will come and go. Guess what? Our city, our capital city, Freetown, is forever. And so that is why we thought that it's prudent to start and kick off with the mayor's debate. I want to welcome you all, and I want to say that I really appreciate your presence here today. It shows that you care about your city. Let us give the support that we can to the candidates, and let us applaud and commend their courage to face you and to be accountable to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Michael. Just some quick housekeeping announcements before we get on the way. This program is live on television and radio and online. The CRI debate is live on Star TV channel 21, Star Radio FM 103.5, Radio Democracy 98.1, Radio Mercury 92.0, Callion Radio 105.7, Radio Lion Mountain Waterloo 101.5, and the Sierra Leone Broadcasting Corporation Television. Could I kindly urge everyone to kindly please either switch off their mobile phones or turn them on silent mode. Thank you very much. Without further wanting to keep them literally in the dark, could I kindly call on the candidates to take to their various left turns. Mr. Ensa Bokari of the Citizens Democratic Party. Mrs. Yvonne Akisoya of the All People's Congress Party. Mr. Raymond D'Souza George of the Sierra Leone People's Party. Mr. Samuel Itam of the National Grand Coalition. And Chief George Songu King of the Coalition for Change C4C Party. Hello and welcome again to the first ever debate for candidates running for mayor of Freetown. It may sound cliche to say Freetown is a heartbeat of Sierra Leone, but it is true. It is the capital city of a country we all profess to love so dearly. It accounts for at least 14% of the country's population. It is a melting pot and the center of gravity for our motherland. Growing up in Kono district, I always felt ashamed that I had to wait until after writing my GCE O-level exams to come to Freetown. Whenever my peers chatted about their escapades in this great city, I melted away, embarrassed. Not having visited Freetown, this garrulous young man would have nothing to say about Freetown. And it pained me. Freetown is a place to go to be exposed and succeed, my friends would taunt me. But is it still? looked at the pages of our geography textbook, Atlas of Sierra Leone, and I marveled beautiful trees along Bapper Street. Today, they are all gone. Nevertheless, Freetown remains a beauty, naturally at least. Its history is rich. Its mountains, which were born out of a volcanic eruption with the lava stretching to form what is today Aberdeen, are a natural solution, one may think, to ridding the place of filth. But that gushing down of rubbish poses a threat to not only our existence, but also to the marine habitat. That can also undermine the huge potential this city has to wow tourists with its beautiful beaches. The mountains and the wonderful sandy and rocky shorelines sandwich the strip that forms a semicircle around those elevated portions. That is Freetown. From when it was called Romaron to its present name, it epitomizes the beauty of a place that God loved when He created it, but man has shown no such love in dwelling in it. Those shorelines are dotted by slums, slums that do not bring smiles, slums that should be the scar on the conscience of our leaders, past and present, amid broken promises. Perhaps even the future leaders, I'm sure the candidates here will disagree and say they represent a break from that ugly past. The questions for this mayoral debate will not emanate from the figments of the organizers' imagination. They will hover around the following, which we found on the Freetown City Council's own LinkedIn account profile, and I quote, Freetown City Council is responsible to transform the municipality of Freetown into a well-planned, modern, dynamic and vibrant metropolis, adequately provided with educational, health and other social facilities, efficiently managed for the entire citizenry to live in clean, healthy, progressively prosperous and environmentally friendly atmosphere. Unquote. Does today's reality reflect the above? If yes, how do we improve on it? If no, how do we bring it about? Clearly, we need the leadership to be able to do that. I bet all 5 candidates here today believe they do represent that leadership. So who does the mayoral seats among them really belong to? Who deserves it? In the next 90 minutes, the candidates will tell us why they are best suited and how they intend to tackle the challenges confronting Freetown. And those challenges are monumental, I've got to warn them. Waste management and sanitation, housing, which includes informal settlements and slums, environmental degradation, revenue generation and corruption within the council, security, education, in municipal schools, street trading, street begging, street roaming of mental patients, to name but a few. Crucially, how will the next mayor partner with the central government, whether or not the president of this country belongs to their political party? So welcome again all of you to this debate, which will be in 6 parts. One part will be for each candidate to tell us about themselves and why they think they should become the next mayor. Then there will be 3 rounds of questions from me. That will be followed by questions from you, the audience. And each candidate will make their closing statements. That, as they say, will be a wrap. Each candidate will have a maximum of 2 minutes to answer to any question. If reference is made to anyone by a fellow candidate, they will have 30 seconds to respond. I will follow up on questions when I deem them appropriate. So brace up candidates, brace up audience, and before we get to the candidates, I want to drop my hat off to all those who got in touch with the organizers for the keen interest they have shown, the questions they sent, and the goodwill messages. Someone lamented over what is not unfamiliar to all of us, the plastic and other rubbish that have taken over our shores. Democracy must be built through open societies, says Atifet Jajaga, a former president of Kosovo. She continues, when there is information, there is enlightenment. When there is debate, there are solutions. When there is no accountability, there is abuse, there is corruption, there is subjugation, and there is indignation. So much for anyone who thinks a debate for people running for office is necessary or not. Part 1. First off, who are these candidates who want to lead the Freetown municipality? in no particular order, N. Sabokari is candidate of the Citizens Democratic Party, CDP. Welcome. Yvonne Akisoya is a candidate for the All People's Congress Party. Welcome. Raymond Asuja George is the candidate for the Sierra Leone People's Party. Welcome.
Thank you.
Samuel Itam of the National Grand Coalition. Welcome. And last, by no means the least, Chief George Sobuke of the Coalition for Change, C4C. Welcome and thank you very much. Please give them a round of applause. So I'll start from my far right. Who are you, sir, and what do you hope to bring to the seat of the mayor of Freetown?
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. All possible staff. I'm Chief Judge Mugri. I'm from Moritan Village. I grew up in Moritan. I'm a family man. I attended the Moritan Municipal Primary School and the Bishop Johnson High School. I also attended the Civil Servicing College and also the EPAM. Why I want to become the mayor of the municipality is to bring out a change. I saw what you have just cited to us about the provision of the city. Everyone knows that the city was not as before, as the grandfathers used to see it, even though they are gone. But we who are left them supposed to bring up the city to its standard. But as I want to become the mayor of the city, I will be responsible to improve in those aspects. I have here my mission statement is to form global coalition on political parties union and to organize interest groups and individuals with the objective of working out and to deliver sustainable national prosperity and development for and by the people of Sierra Leone.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, sir. That was well on time. Thank you very much. Mr. Itam, sir, who are you and why do you want me and everyone else registered here and outside to vote for you? What do you bring to that seat of mayor?
My name is Samuel Itam, born in Freetown, grew up in the area. My father was a soldier, so I lived in all the barracks, including Daru and sometimes Go. I went to school, to the various primary schools in this area. Last primary school was in Wilberforce. I went to the Sierra Leone Grammar School. After a couple of years, I went to the Services Secondary School. And then I went back to the Sierra Leone Grammar School to do my sixth form. I went to the UK on the scholarship from the Sierra Leone government. I studied in Queen Mary University of London and then at the London School of Economics and Political Science. From where I went to Washington and I worked for the International Monetary Fund for 32 years. I spent my whole career there. I returned to Freetown in 2007 at the urging of the late President Kaba. I served as economic advisor with him. I also served briefly with President Nkrumah as economic advisor. Then I went back to Washington to represent a group of countries at the executive board, the IMF, at the urging and posting of President Nkrumah. This is when our representation then in Washington came back to Freetown to sign. Now, I return back again. I've been very much a retired person, following things in my community. I live at Side Street, Ascension Town area. And after being here for the last 10 years or so, I realized that everything that our moderator outlined before as to what the city council should be doing, as to the place that we should be living. That has all gone. No accountability. No accountability has led to what? What we call lawlessness. No responsibility, no development. In fact, we've gone back many years. And I tell you, this is the last 10 years under the APC government. We have actually gone backwards in many respects. Health, education, sanitation, you name it. But more importantly, we are not building the foundation in this city for the future generation to grow. We're not building the laying down the instruments, the structures for Freetown to be a place where we live and prosper. Instead, it has become a place where we live and suffer. We want to change that. And this is the drive why I come, because I want to be the mayor of Freetown.
Yvonne Akisoya, who are you and why should I or anybody else vote for you as mayor of Freetown?
My name is Yvonne Akisoya, me Morgan, and I'm passionate about my country and my city. In terms of my academic and professional qualifications, I'm economics by degree, first degree in economics, master's in international relations. I'm also a chartered accountant. And I've worked for 26, 27 odd years now in various sectors, principally the financial market sector, but with a lot of experience in project management, risk management, and financial management. My statement about my passion actually speaks to why I want to be the mayor. And it's evidenced not by my professional qualifications, but by the things that I've done over the last 20 or so years. And those span 3 areas or 3 sectors. In the voluntary sector, in the 1990s, but specifically after January 6, 1999, in response to the atrocities that I saw, myself and 6 friends co-founded an organization called Sierra Leone War Trust for Children. That organization, over the last 18 years, has worked to campaign against blood diamonds. It's supported young people all over the country, including in remote parts of the north. Worked with ex-child soldiers in the 2000s, provided scholarships to young girls over the last 9 years, and is now working with Ebola orphans in the Waterloo area. It's been doing that since 2015. So that's my voluntary hand. In the private sector, I've been a major contributor and investor to this country through the work that I've done as the investment director of the Idea Company, which is building the Hilton Freetown Cape Zero Hotel, providing jobs for hundreds of people now, and will provide more jobs, hundreds directly and thousands indirectly, because of the impact it will have on the tourism industry. Bringing a brand like the Hilton will make a significant difference to Sierra Leone's tourism potential. And thirdly, the third area of my life, which has demonstrated that the word passion that I use in introducing myself isn't just a word, it's the way I live my life. And that is my response and my involvement in the Ebola outbreak, where at a time where many people were leaving this country, I chose to come back to Sierra Leone in November 2014 and serve as the Director of Planning for the National Ebola Response, putting myself all over this country in places where the outbreak was most serious and planning the response. Moving on from there, I served as the Director of the Delivery Team Lead for the President's Recovery Priorities, helping the economy to get back on its feet. And it was in that role that I really first realized how broken our systems are within the Freetown City Council. Because working on waste management brought me face to face with a lack of processes and systems. So why do I want to be the mayor? Obama said, change will not come if you wait for some other person or some other time. Change, you are the change that you have been waiting for. You are the change that you seek. So very simply, ladies and gentlemen, I want to be mayor because I love my country, because I have demonstrated that through the work that I've done for close on 20 years, and because I now see an opportunity to continue to invest in my country and invest in my city, bringing the skills that I have, which are transferable in order to make a difference. I delivered before, and I'm confident that I'll deliver again.
Thank you very much. Raymond De Souza George, what do you bring to the office of Mayor of Freetown should he be elected? Why should anybody vote for you, sir?
Well, first of all, I would like to say I bring myself. If you think back, I think the question, who deserves the mayor's seat, is the theme for this debate. And I would say that answer lies in the hearts and hands and fingertips of you, the voters. But why do I want to be the mayor? Like Yvonne, I am passionate. I have all my life been a backstage worker in this municipality, using my creative abilities to serve. And I've been doing that for over half a century, and I've not been paid for any of it. But let me go back to the beginning of my education. I was processed at St. John's School, Brookfields, Army School, Tower Hill, Cathedral Boys School, West African Methodist Collegiate, FBC in the University of Sierra Leone, and the Leeds University in England. As I said, I've been backstage, doing all I can, and like people have helped to mold my mind, I have molded the minds of so many who are in positions now that I would like to occupy. But we all have unique abilities, and the abilities I have, I would couch in creativity. And I think governing Freetown or running Freetown needs a lot of creativity. And I have sewn that into the fabric of Freetown over the years by my contribution to Ebola, my contribution to various other aspects, education, the civil service. I have been commissioned to do so many creative works for so many institutions across the board. And I believe that as mayor, that creativity would help me achieve a dream that I have had all the time, building a family out of Freetown. I like families. And I think building a family out of Freetown would be the bedrock for a solution to all the problems that we have. And this is why, coming to this podium to present myself as the mayoral candidate, I would like to say that family can be built with all of you through the ballot box. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Raymond De Souza George. Ensa Bokari, what makes you feel and probably think that you deserve to be mayor of Freetown?
Thank you very much. Well, I'm presenting myself as a candidate for the position of mayor of Freetown on the ticket of the Citizens Democratic Party, aka Allies One. I am a highly motivated and focused leader with excellent skills, experience, and international exposure in promoting an integrated approach to development, employment, and empowerment. I have demonstrated the ability to meet targeted results under pressure. I'm a good team builder and player with abilities to work well on my own initiatives, adopting innovative, proactive, and committed approaches to all endeavors, and willing to learn emerging issues in development work. I can say that looking at my colleagues, I'm a U.S. Department of State trained grassroots Democrat, and part of my package was working with local councils in the United States of America. I'm also a World Bank certified innovator. I participated in the World Bank Innovation Fair in Cape Town. I've served the Freetown City Council. I was founding member of the Freetown Waste Management Board. When the board was dissolved after the election of President Nkrumah, during the reconstitution meeting of the board, the team consider that I did well in the first term, and even though I've never been APC, I was reappointed to serve the APC government on the Freetown Waste Management Board, and I did well. I also attended the International Youth Crime Prevention and Cities Summit, which was organized by UN Habitat in Durban, South Africa. That gives me, a lot of experience in how cities across the world operate. I've been in, management before I established the Youth Alliance for Peace and Development. I attracted $1 million funding from the Diana Princess of Wales Memorial Trust Fund. I gave grants to youth organizations and youth-serving agencies across the city. I have contributed and interacted a lot with young people across the city. I believe crime is a serious issue, and to prevent crime, you need somebody who is very close to the perpetrators of crime, who is able to work with them to make sure, to make sure that you live in a peaceful environment.
How close are you to those perpetrators, sir?
Thank you. If I was still a young person, a youth, based on the age bracket, I would have said I'm a youth, and so the youths who are perpetrating violence, I'm amongst their age bracket. But I've crossed the youth age. That's why I'm taking this challenge. So, but I'm the closest. I believe when I look at the team, I'm the closest in terms of in terms of understanding the germane activities, the things that push them to crime. And I believe, with experience, I can help prevent crime in the city. I'm on this ticket on the platform of contacts and innovation. I believe I have all the contact it takes to transform Freetown. And as I've said, I'm a World Bank certified innovator. So,
all right, thank you very much. I just want to introduce the bell. In the next round, which begins in the next few seconds, when 2 minutes are up, the bell will sound. From Orugu Bridge to Sir Samuel Lewis Bridge, the Freetown municipality is suffocating itself and its residents. Waste management has been a problem. Early morning smogs have become a menacing health hazard, especially if you live in King Tom and parts of Congo Town, like I do, or in and around Upgon in the east. The concomitant effect on hygiene and on the health of Freetonians is stark. Cholera and malaria compete to wreak havoc on us because the poor management of waste has provided the breeding ground for mosquitoes. How will you tackle this menace if elected mayor? I'll start with you, Mr. Itam.
Thank you very much. I think the challenge you face in dealing with sanitation, we have to start with ourselves. We have to take pride in the surrounding in which we live. We have to contribute to cleaning the city. Having said that, do you know there are clear guidelines in the local government? That's what individual, the responsibility of each of us in terms of our neighbors and our houses. Freetown City Council has got a department that is supposed to be going around and guiding people and providing services, including the spraying of mosquitoes, etc. Now, when was the last time you saw anybody do that? And there are people collecting pay, but not doing it. So, first and foremost, we have to start working with the areas that are broken. I am very glad to know that there are others as well who realize that the system is broken. Those that are broken and could work will fix. Those that are opaque will remove. And those that we need to establish in order to build a modern city, we should institute. But the key thing is, we don't want one wonder. We don't want to say we do Operation Clean Freetown and it lasts for a month and everybody forgets about it. We don't want to decentralize the cleaning of Freetown to the world and then we forget about it. We want to implement things consistently, every day, applying to everybody, and there are penalties.
Would you,
There are penalties.
would you, for example, support or call for a ban on the use of plastic bags in Freetown?
Certainly, we could explore that and see how to gradually. But the latest city to do that, Nairobi, and they've seen progress, despite the challenges they face from neighboring countries. Certainly, some types of plastic are to be stopped. We have to put a way forward for recycling certain others. We have to start to separate our garbage. That are recyclable, those that are biodegradable, and those that we could reuse. All these things we could do. And the interesting thing is, we used to do that in Freetown. We used to collect bottles separately, garbage separately. But we have to facilitate that for the residents. We have to have a clear procedure, and we must enforce the law for people to have consequences when you do not follow it. We're not.
Yvonne, Freetown's waste management seems to be an albatross around the neck of the municipality. How do you hope to deal with this?
We need a comprehensive solution. It needs to be end-to-end. So you start with the creation of waste, and there's far too much waste being created. And you go right through down to the disposal of waste, which is the landfill. So in between, you have systems of collection. I start off by saying one of my big issues is the lack of systems. You need systems for collection. You need systems for enforcement. You need resources for enforcement. You need, Sam said, it's about people, it's about changing attitudes, people's waste attitude. And all of that requires consequences to be put in place. A quick word on Operation Clean Freetown, just for correction there. So Operation Clean Freetown had two objectives. One was to do a comprehensive clean as a one-off deep clean, which it successfully did, and removed from within Freetown 344 40-foot containers of waste over a 60-day period. The second was actually to create employment for young people. 102 groups were set up as businesses to collect household waste. So that's an important thing to note. It's household waste. Those groups are still functioning. About 15 of them are underperforming, but a number of them are doing so well that they're actually buying additional tricycles themselves, and one of them is looking to buy their own diner. So as a model for seeing how you can use a problem and not only address that problem, but actually address another problem, which is youth unemployment, it has been incredibly successful. What people don't realize, I recognize, and I want to clarify, is that Operation Clean Freetown was not ever meant to be the solution to all of Freetown's waste problems. It was just bringing those two pieces in, doing the household waste collection for a limited number of households, and also doing the intensive clean. To the general question, what is important is that we don't have one-offs. We don't have things which are not sustainable. So when I talk about looking at it from end to end, you really need to think about, I say this often when I'm on the streets with people, I'm like, the waste doesn't come from the sky and hit the floor. It's Freetonians who are drinking paper, plastic, water, dropping on the floor. You have conversations with people who tell you, this dirty, 2 more. Next minute, they're dropping a plastic bag on the floor themselves. So we've actually got, behaviors will change when situations force them to change. Human beings don't change easily. Two of the things that need to be put in place: consequences, but infrastructure. You don't tell someone, don't throw the waste on the floor and not provide bins. So we're talking about a solution which is end-to-end. I touched on, under Operation Clean Freetown, we talked about households. Of the 250,000 households in Freetown, Operation Clean Freetown registered 100,000 households. So we've got over half which can be and will be registered. In addition to that, you've got your public spaces. Operation Clean Freetown did not deal with that at all. Well, I get there.
I will give Mrs. Akisoya 30 seconds because she clarified a point that apparently involved her by Mr. Itam. 30 seconds, please.
Okay, so I think the other thing which we need to talk about is we don't actually do any recycling in Sierra Leone, and we tried to do it a little bit recently with plastics. That would be, for me, one of the key elements. So end-to-end, collection, making sure we've got attitudes, so enforcement against perpetrators of littering, enforcement in the courts, going on then with making sure you've actually got systems of collection, both household, street, public places, the market, the cemeteries, etc. Recycling. We've got to be able to deal with our waste. And finally, the landfills. You talked about the upgone and the smoke.
Thank you very much.
The landfills need to be improved, and we will do that.
I'm afraid your time is up, ma'am. Raymond D'Souza George. There was a health minister in Freetown called, I think, Agnes Taylor Lewis. She said this: Freetown no doti, na doti de Freetown. How do you hope to fix this?
I totally agree. Because I even wrote a poem on that issue using her exact words. But permit me to take a loan from Etham, consequences, and from Yvonne, infrastructure. Those two are essential if we must put a break and finally end the mess that we have in Freetown. But then I look at it, how do we go about it? I like to create fun. And therefore I thought of a mechanism that I would call fun, which means F for feel, U for uncomfortable, N for now. Feel uncomfortable now. If you feel uncomfortable now, then you are definitely going to do something to make the discomfort move away from you. So what I have been thinking about, how do we manufacture, as it were, this debris that piles up and builds up into mountains? Take, for example, how did we used to clean our compounds? We start from the gate, the front entrance, sweep, take all the dirt to the backyard. And you spread that on around the bottom or the base of the plants, and you have manure. But when we began to have plastics, it seems as though that was what triggered the change of attitude. People began to sweep from the backyard onto the gate, and they have inside the gutter. And when that happens, we create a problem for everyone. So my idea is to have what we would call an ongoing civic education program for the entire Freetown, if not Sierra Leone itself, so that when that keeps going on all the time, people begin to acquire the knowledge of the evil that they are creating, awareness of the evil that they are creating, and they would be committed to the fact that we do not only have rights to have a clean society, but we also have a duty to make that society clean. We have a duty, a responsibility. So that's why my foundation, as I said in my first statement, I would like to create a family feeling. And when we know that now we all get Freetown, we all go come back for do something for make Freetown clean.
Thank you very much. Ensa Bokari, how would you deal with the sanitation problem of Freetown were you to be elected mayor?
I believe the problem is that the APC and the SLPP for over 56 years have failed to establish a sincere platform. You know, those of you who have your ears on the ground will agree with me that so many companies have come to Freetown with the intention of transforming what we refer to as bombers into gas opportunities and also energy opportunities. But I'm not sure they've paid the appropriate kickbacks. And so we still have bomber as, you know, a challenge for us. I think I have the appropriate contacts, and I can name Leon Mohammed in Chicago, who is willing to come and work with me, transform those bombers into gas opportunities and energy opportunities for Freetown. But we can only succeed if we plan properly. That's lacking. You know, if we bring on board, a participatory approach to these challenges, we need to bring all the key players on board. We need to agree collectively with those who are doing business with plastic that we should increase their tax. You know, they should pay more because their own form of garbage, you know, is very, very difficult to manage. And
so you will not support a ban on the use of plastic bags, but you will impose heavy taxes on them?
Well, in the first place, we'll start by imposing tax, you know, and if that fails, then we can ban eventually. But the first step is to ensure that we put special tax charges for plastic producers and those who are dealing with the production of such waters. And then we also ensure that we have a participatory approach to garbage collection in Freetown. The problem we have is that over the years, we've not enjoyed real devolution. You know, what we have is decentralization that is still managed at State House. If the functions are properly devolved and the funding, you know, allocated appropriately to the council will put in place mechanisms to ensure that garbage and waste is properly collected and handled. But I believe with my administration, we'll encourage the central government to devolve properly, and we also prepare the necessary legislations for Parliament to consider. You know, that's also one of the challenges. Before this debate, yesterday actually, I went to the City Council. I engaged the Chief Administrator and the Finance Officer, and I realized, looking at their budget, that these are some of the challenges they are facing. You know, they are not engaging, you know, the necessary stakeholders appropriately. We have all the competence we need to get Freetown clean in Freetown. You know, so what we need is engage.
Thank you very much. Chief Judge Songu King, how would you fix the filth in Freetown?
To eradicate the filth in Freetown, I think the foremost things we have to do is we have to apply the law. Freetown City Council, they have the bylaws. Without implying road laws, people will just do all what sort of things. Then also to eradicate the sanitation in Freetown, for being a mayor, I will try to create people who will work during the night. I will apply for to get vehicles to clear all the garbages in the street. Get street lights, put street lights in the street. That is very important, so that during the course of the day, people go about their normal business. Then during the night, we have workers which the council will have to pay, so that we'll have to get all the garbage out of the city. In question of the plastic, I think we have to ban plastic in this country. Because people are difficult. We have to ban that. People are very difficult to adhere to rules and regulations in this country. They are difficult to adhere to rules, except in there is a law. They have to face the law. Then we shall see sanity in the city. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. Even common decency is under attack in Freetown. It is commonplace to see people urinating in public and dumping waste, however, wherever, whenever. How would he curb this? Using existing and future bylaws and given Metropolitan Police Force is underfunded and under-resourced. Mrs. Akisoya.
I think you're sort of answering the question yourself, because one of the tenets, one of the foundations in terms of being able to address these is actually having an enforcement agency, and that is the Freetown Metropolitan Police, who currently are seriously underfunded. The points that have been made, just quickly on plastics, and I think on the sanitation point generally, I don't want people to underestimate the scale of the problem that we have. Currently, only about 20 to 30% of the waste that's being generated in the city is actually making its way out of the city to the dump sites. There are hundreds of illegal dump sites all over Freetown. Many people don't see them because they're not visible, but they are there in the back corners, in the back streets, in the informal dwellings, informal communities. So when we talk about the sanitation issue in Freetown, I want us all to recognize that this is going to be a significant challenge. It's not impossible, but we shouldn't take it lightly. To the point about the urination, the dumping, it's all tied in. I started off by saying we need a comprehensive solution, end to end. The beginning of that is what we do about ensuring you've got the infrastructure, you've got the public toilets, You've got the, you've got the public dustbins, you've got the street bins, so that people have alternatives. But it's not just that one side. It's the carrot, but it's also the stick. We need to ensure the Metropolitan Police are in a position to enforce the law. The bylaws are there. They've been looked at quite recently. They don't actually need to be strengthened. They cover everything from the fact that we have homes, landlords building properties and giving them to tenants without providing toilets. So we have situations where tenants, and I've seen this with my own eyes many times, tenants are forced to do their business in plastic bags and deposit it wherever they can. These are unacceptable, and the law prevents them from happening. We need to enforce the law.
Mr. D'Souza George.
I would definitely agree with Yvonne that we need to enforce the law. And as she's pointed out, the Metropolitan Police is terribly underfunded. But again, you go back to the minds of people, our personal orientation. What do we do with filth? What do we do with ourselves, the functions of our bodies that create unwanted materials? I came across somebody urinating against the CID wall some years ago, and I parked my car, I sat there, wrote a poem, show patriotism. But then I began to analyze his actions. I said, is this the way you show patriotism? Because he just came out of the car, and before you knew it, there were 4 others in the car. He was like this, and away he went. So it's that consciousness in people that is at the base of most of our problems.
So how will you fix that, were you to be elected mayor?
Well, that's why I said I would like to start with a civic education, because for me, it's the foundation of everything. If we are sensitive to our responsibilities, then the provisions for these institutions, even if they could not go all the way, would go a long way to solving the problems, because resources are definitely important. But the resources that we need mostly is the attitude of people. Because when you have, take for example, you say the Metropolitan Police would be one of the implementers of the law. If they themselves are not fully trained, fully committed to their responsibilities, you would still have the problem being partly.
Thank you very much. Mr. Ensabokari, I mean, it's clear that this whole thing is a very serious problem and that the Metropolitan Police Force heavily underfunded, heavily under-resourced. How would you deal with that to ensure they are able to police the city?
As I have said, planning is the key. At the planning of the new Freetown City Development Plan will ensure that we have a Metropolitan Police that is motivated, that is key, that is fully funded and supported. We have to enforce the law, but also what we see they do is they go around grabbing people for their own personal interest or gains. I believe they should work for the city. And so we need to put, a legal arrangement in place so that we have a court, where we can have perpetrators of crime go, present themselves and, are asked by law to pay for whatever crime they commit. That's one arrangement that is seriously lacking in the arrangement. So we have to ensure that the law is properly enforced without bias. We don't have to look at your color, the color of your clothes, or, your surname, or which political party you belong to. We have to be fair, we have to be sincere with ourselves, and I believe if we plan properly, we can implement collectively. That's what's lacking. We have not involved the people of Freetown. If you ask the people of Freetown right now, even those who are here in this hall to tell you what the vision of Freetown City Council is, you hardly find one person who will tell you because they are not involved. You cannot run a city without the people. We have to make sure that our even local tax is sold. What mechanisms can we put in place to ensure that we motivate the citizens to pay for the tax? We don't have willing taxpayers anywhere in the world, but we have to put in place mechanisms. And that's what is lacking. It's lacking because the people are taken off the process is not transparent, the process is not sincere, and that is the platform we have created to ensure that we involve the people of Freetown in the management of Freetown. They all have a role to play. You know, if you know it's a crime.
Chief George, how would you adequately fund and resource the Metropolitan Police to be able to deal with this?
Mr. Metropolitan Police, I think we should, in fact, employ more policemen in that city council. I don't think they reach up to 12. I mean, you should start from the lowest grade of corporal, sergeant, up to inspector or chief inspector. You have more policemen in that place, so that we still monitoring the streets and see how people are misusing the city. I think we have to make sure that we have more policemen in the Freetown City Council.
Thank you very much. Mr. Itam, what would be your blueprint to dealing with this, not least because of the condition in which the Metropolitan Police Force is?
I think the blueprint is shared by everybody, but I think let us put emphasis where we should. First, we have to provide facilities. We did have public facilities. Provide public facilities, man them, keep them hygienic. On those who infringe on the bylaw. The bylaw cannot do that. If nobody is arrested, nobody is seen being punished, then it continues. And this is very symptomatic of everything that is happening in Freetown. Nobody obeys laws because the law is not enforced consistently across the board and every day, not just 1 week, not just 1 month. We have to deal with this, and this is the responsibility of the Freetown City Council. Now, raising money, yes, I have said many times, Freetown City Council has got no reason to be poor. Revenue could be generated. But let's look at the system at first. Let's strengthen those that are broken. Let us establish those that we need for the city to become a modern place.
Thank you very much. I mean, you touched on a very interesting point there about, you know, the city not having any business being poor, revenue collection. We'll come to that in a minute. But I'll just remind us that this is the mayoral debate organized by CRI magazine, and we are coming to you from the Lagunda complex in Freetown. The rebel war in the 1990s served as a catalyst for vulnerable people in the provinces to seek succor in Freetown. Many of them chose not to return anymore. So much so that housing has now become hounding in Freetown. Across Africa, the share of urban residents has increased from 14% in 1950 to 40% in 2016. Urbanization in Freetown in particular is unplanned and not environmentally friendly, according to the Africa Economic Outlook of 2016, published by the UNDP and the African Development Bank. With joblessness rife, people have found unorthodox ways to make ends meet in Freetown. That has brought about its own ramifications. In fact, according to the Agenda for Prosperity document, Freetown is the highest contributor to poverty in Sierra Leone. Between 2003 and 2011, incidence of poverty reduced nationally, but increased in Freetown by 7%, from 13.6 to 20.7. How would you deal with this, Mr. Raymond de Souza George?
Well, I think we should start again by looking at punitive measures. But even before I go to that, I want to go back to people coming. Let's take the rebel war. People fled for their lives. They came to Freetown legitimately seeking safety. But then come elections, since we were much, much younger then, we've seen people being carted to Freetown to vote. And at the end of the elections, they are left high and dry. They don't go back. So that's one way in which we have this problem. And how do we solve that problem? How do we solve that problem? which means those who created that problem, the various parties who've sort of engaged the voters, should I say, as mercenaries, the various parties should come together and, together with the Freetown City Council, devise a plan. Because when you take the volume of housing available and the overcrowding that comes up, you begin to think, you weigh yourself down by thinking, what solutions would I come up with? So one thing I have in mind is to come up with what we would call minimum housing standards. If you apply that right across the board, you find out that you will be able at least to eliminate some of these trouble centers where you have shacks all over the place, most of them uninhabitable. But if we can do that, and those that are properly constructed, we make sure that they are properly maintained, we would be having some.
Thank you very much. I was actually going to ask a follow-up question, but I think I'll find time later on to be able to do that. Ensa Bokare, were you to be elected mayor of Freetown, how would you decongest the city? Would your strategy include demolishing the slums?
I believe decentralization is not disintegration. And so for this particular initiative, we need to partner with central government to make sure that the huge capital investments involved in moving people from slums to other locations are undertaken. But most importantly, I'll come again and say we should be sincere about it. I know that over the years, slum dwellers have been given parcels of land outside the city to relocate, but because the politicians are not sincere, they leave them there for votes. And that is a challenge. Most of the dwellers are there because the politicians are afraid that if they move them, they will not vote for them. So if they are not sincere with the people of Freetown, you cannot achieve the goal. My administration will take decision on slums that are dangerous for the inhabitants, we'll move them. We'll move them to safer locations in their own interest. We'll explain to them sincerely for them to understand the initiative. That's all what this is about. But if we keep playing politics about it, if we do surveys to find out, I mean, the highest, if we do surveys to find out who are living in this community, if they are mostly our tribe men, we leave them there. If they are mostly our party supporters, we leave them there. We cannot achieve the goal. And these people are living in dangerous conditions. We should value life in this country for once. You know, year in, year out, flooding and mudslides kill the people of Sierra Leone. And yet still, government for over 56 years, under the leadership of the APC and the SLPP, I will say again, have not treated, you know, the lives of Sierra Leoneans seriously. And I think we should think very seriously.
I'm afraid I gotta leave it there. Chief Judge, will you remove the swamp dwellers from their current abodes? Were you to be elected?
Mr. People, this topic is very difficult to debate on. It's very difficult. But saying the truth, after the rebel war, we thought people came from different locations up the provinces. I think they will have to, actually have to go back to their various villages. You see, some of them work with two padlock, two perfume. They don't have anywhere to sleep.
So you will do forced resettlements of these people?
Yes, I will do settlement. But if you create a place for them to go and stay, they will come back to the slum to stay. So that's why I said it's very difficult to handle this topic. Except government or city council try a way to find a solution.
You are the mayor, let's assume. How would you deal with it?
We try to relocate them. We try to locate them to another position.
Mr. Itam, Mr. Samuel Itam, clearly Freetown is a very congested place. How would you deal with this? And the third bit of my question I didn't raise earlier, but Mr. Ensabokari did raise it. How would you ensure that you work with the central government in achieving this? Not least if you and the president of the country belong to two different political parties.
I think this is a very serious issue. Nobody wants to live in a slum. Nobody. If you have the right set of policies that create jobs, people, once they have jobs, they will be the one moving. But at the same time, we do have in the books clear zoning laws and bylaws which are not implemented. If you implement that also, that will assist. We also have a situation where it is the very central government that is giving building permits to construct buildings where they're not supposed to be. Therefore, let's face it, the final aspect about it all, if you concentrate all development in one area, people move towards where they think things are better. You said that yourself opening up. You said you wanted to come to Freetown because of all the bright lights you were told about. Now, when people are told about the bright lights, they also want to come. Therefore, first of all, Freetown City Council has got to work with the central government. Central government has got to see how to a little bit diversify, provide the other facilities in the rest of the country as well. Yes, we'll blame the civil war. We'll blame this. But we have to devolve. That is the whole essence about the decentralization, which we have not pursued. Second, enforce the laws. But most importantly, please, for Freetown City Council, we have to think of a way of attracting businesses and activities that will generate employment opportunities. With these, we are sure to attract people to move up the scale. And then, at the same time, we enforce the laws. People are not going to go away. People are not going to go. They came here, they are going to stay. Therefore, we have to work with them. See how we could provide, somebody mentioned minimum houses.
Sorry, Mr. Tam.
No-cost houses.
Time is up.
These are the things we want.
Thank you. Mrs. Akisoya, the slums do not exist for lack of any action. President Kaba ensured that he removed people from Morwaf and took them out of Freetown. They came back. Recently, following the flooding of 2 years ago, President Kuruma's administration built houses outside of Freetown. People chose to stay there. How will you deal with it?
Thank you very much. I think it's a question of scale that we should also be aware of. You mentioned earlier on about 14% of the population living in Freetown. I'm not sure how many of us are aware that Freetown actually accounts for just 1% of the landmass of the country. So that's the sort of level of density we're talking about. There are 72 slum dwellings, informal dwellings in this city, 72. An average of 13,000 people live in each one of the big ones. So just put that in mind when you're talking about what the solution will be. With that background, we know that the solution is going to be a complex one, and it's not going to be simple. It will at least involve two key parts. One would be the question of relocation, but I am talking about scale here. So when you're talking about relocation, you have to be talking about it, recognizing that we need to create housing stock for 100,000 people, hundreds of thousands of people. That's not an easy ask. It's something we should plan for with central government, but it's something we should be realistic about and understand that we're going to have to do on a phased approach. But it is a target. The second part of it, which is more immediate, is what we do with the people who can't move because we cannot provide that quantity of housing stock immediately. One of the, there's a place called Culvert. I'm not sure how many people are familiar with it. It's the back of Granville Brook. I went to that slum for the first time after the mudslide. And the chief said to me, don't take the people out of the slum, take the slum out of the people. And there's something in that about what we do about improving the living conditions of those that we cannot move immediately.
I want to probe you on that. How do you take the slum out of Krube and not the people out of Kruger.
So that's why I made the distinction. I said there's 72 slums. We cannot take a blanket one size fits all. We actually need to do the work. There are various organizations, there are studies that have been done. We need to take this on a case-by-case basis. One of the things that we need to do as well is beginning to build up. Freetown, most of our buildings, we obviously have an electricity problem as well, which affects that. But in short, the slum dwellings need to be addressed. We need to get the people relocated or improve the situations. Fundamentally, poverty, job creation is tied in with that as well.
Thank you very much. Raymond de Souza George, how do you deal with it? Do you subscribe to the notion that you take the slum out of the people, or you remove them from the slums and decongest the city? How do you do that?
I think both propositions are possible. There are times when you would have to force somebody out of a situation towards which he or she has become accustomed. There are times when education, the awareness of the hazards that would impinge on the comfort, the health, the hygiene of that particular person. I think both are applicable. But you have to think about resources. Whatever you do, you have to think about the availability of resources. And I believe that partnership with the private sector might help the council in that direction. Because if you have areas mapped out, you zone the areas, and you challenge the people in terms of fun competition. It might sound ridiculous, but you challenge them to see how they can handle their situations and become better equipped to move on or to take action on improving their settlements. Then I think the private sector would be very helpful in that direction.
Thank you very much. Another vexed issue, street trading. Chief George, you are next. How would you deal with the issue of street trading? Will you remove street traders whom it seems elect lawmakers, lord it over the Lord, and do whatever they feel like doing? How would you deal with street trading? And I'm going to add another one there, please, if you may. In recent times, we've seen lots of mental patients roaming the streets, and street beggars around Cotton Tree, literally just meters to the office of the president and to the law court building. How would you deal with those streets, what some would call street menaces?
Thank you very much. In connection with street trading, I think we have to build more markets. Build more market in a sense, we have to add, we are like Fisher Street, add more floors into that market. Then in other areas, you try to put up markets, more than 3 or 4 stories. Then we can remove the traders from the street. We can remove them from the street. Because as it's now, right now, you cannot do anything. Right now, except to have the market for them.
What would you say to somebody who said that they do not sell on the street for want of a market? Some have empty markets. They've chosen to sell on the streets.
Well, I think we have to get the city council police to...
You are the mayor, sir. How would you deal with this?
Well, try to get out of the street. But on a more serious note, the way and manner which we'll get them out of the street, except we'll get a marketplace for them. On a serious note. Except to have a market. Then if they refuse to enter the market, then the law will take its course.
Mr. Itam, how would you deal with this? And again, I ask, there are people who are of the view that these traders don't necessarily sell on the streets because they don't have a marketplace for selling. How would you deal with street traders and those with mental issues roaming the streets, as well as beggars? Sometimes they even really want to jump into your car when you don't give them money.
Thank you. I always give this example. If you go around Lumley, on the wall around St. Mark Church, there's a sign, no street trading. At the same time, you see a Freetown City Council personnel
selling license to traders. We are complicit to it. But clearly, things have moved. We want a bigger market. We want facilities in the market. But also, we want facilities for the market to buy, gone. Many people go with their cars. So we have to think about parking and the way we adjust the traffic. But most important of all, supply rules. You know why people will come to the street to sell and leave the market empty? They want to be the first to be seen by a customer. And they get advantage over those who are in. Insist and follow the rule that you cannot trade here. You should be in the market, and everybody agrees to it, they will go back in. But we must work with the market traders. We must work with the facilities that is required. We must also look at the aspect from the customer side in terms of parking facilities and accessibility to markets. These are challenges. But I tell you something, sir. These market people do not want to be under the hot sun. They do not want to be under heavy rain. They want facilities. So we have to work with them and enforce the law again, consistently, every day, on everybody.
Thank you. Mrs. Akisoya, some of these traders seem to have read some of the laws of this country, and they cite the Trades Act, which they say a lot of the business people, for example, on Abacha Street, are in breach of, which is why they sell retail in front of those stalls. How do you deal with that?
I think it comes back to the point that's been made earlier about zoning of the city, having designated areas which are allowed for trading and designated areas which are where trading is prohibited, and making sure that that's enforced. Of course, as we said before when we talked about sanitation, you always need to make provision. If you're going to say, don't be on the streets, we have to recognize that currently we actually do not have enough market spaces. I take your point that there are markets which are empty. You know, you go to Kutan Road and you see that upstairs is actually empty. But that again is because if you look at the number of people who are outside Kutan Road, they could never have fitted inside. So I will come back and I'll say this. In situations where one is running for office, there's often the tendency to make promises which are undeliverable. I'm not going to do that. I am taking the point of view that the way we need to approach this is to be systematic and to be realistic about what is achievable. We need to invest in more markets.
So you don't think it is achievable to get traders off the street?
Oh, I think it is. I'm just talking about how you phase it. You know, there's some which are just, this afternoon, before coming, I called the president of the Traders Council, and I wanted to know if, you know, we seem to have had this explosion of people all selling junks, toys, junks, plates and glasses. There's like a particular model of trade that seems to be going along every single street in the city. So I wanted to know if these guys come under Traders Council. And he says they've taken a card, but they're not really under their leadership. I also spoke to the chief administrator at the council and asked if they've been giving licenses to these guys. And they said they weren't. So there are people who are trading illegally, and that needs to be addressed. But in all of this, we come back to the question of poverty. You see that person who is selling those secondhand clothes or those secondhand toys. That person is a breadwinner. That person has a family. So as we approach this, we need to do it in a comprehensive manner where we're bringing people to the table and really giving solutions which are long-term, not just stocking up a problem for tomorrow.
All right. Mr. Raymond Estuzi George, when he was president of Sierra Leone, Amat Jan Kaba set up a committee comprising the ministers of lands, internal affairs, and one of the ministers I've forgotten now. The committee was to have taken the traders off the streets of Freetown. It failed abysmally. President Nkrumah did the same thing with Operation Weed. It failed dramatically. How would you deal with this?
Well, I think why these things fail is because generally you would assume that there's a lack of political will to enforce what you have more or less legislated, if I should put it that way. Because if something is on the government's table and you've called together, you've put together a committee that powerful, I don't think the people, the traders, would have the nerve or the muscle to resist unless there is some kind of muscle behind them that enables them to resist. My brother here is talking about sincerity. And I believe if we are sincere as politicians, then there are certain things which, if we have the will and we sincerely want to serve the people and not our own interest, we would definitely put our feet down and push forward with the measures that we have stipulated.
I'm sorry for butting in, if you had a bylaw that forbade street trading and that dictated that they be taken off the streets, and you wanted to implement that, the central government stood in your way, what would you do?
Perhaps, to be honest with you, if this persists, there's something called resignation. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. If you consistently prevent me from serving the people according to my conscience, I don't think I would continue to insult myself by continuing in office.
Thank you. Ensa Bokari, how would you deal with this? People believe it's a vexed issue. Would you, if you were mayor of Freetown, would you get the traders off the streets first before making any provision, or would you leave them to be there until you were able to, even if you couldn't, relocate them to a market or markets?
I think I'll approach this by, in the first place, understand what's happening. You see, there are so many players. Some of those people who sell in the streets are working for people. The microfinance institutions in this country, they are here not to help our people, but to extort them. They give them pittance to sell in the streets. So we have to engage and understand, the hidden factors. If we bring them out, that will help a lot. I also believe that they should be involved in the process. I have a lot of experience working with street traders across the Commonwealth when I worked for the Commonwealth Youth Program. And I know with experience that it's a huge challenge even for the city of Johannesburg. But I believe that if we engage, we can put in place appropriate mechanisms and bring out the hidden factors. A lot of them, are working for people who, in fact, they are in a form of slavery, which we need to address because they are our people. We need to have them protected. Also, we need to register them. What happened over the years is that under the administrations, past and present, they bring out this operation with. So whenever they do that, because they're not sincere implementing it, one group leaves. By the time they allow the same group to come back, another group has engaged, and so the places were crowded. So the approach should be sustainable.
All right, thank you very much. A round of applause for them, please, as we go to the next part. Because of time, we're going to skip some of the issues we have here and turn the microphone to you, and it's going to be a real lightning round. Very briefly, in 30 seconds, if you have any questions for the candidates to panelists, could I see your hand up, please? There are microphones around.
Good evening to the audience. To the candidates, I say good evening. We've had a lot of issues about the problems of Freetown. What we should be looking for in this city are solutions. I want to know from everyone up there, in terms of waste management, what solutions, each one must give me an example, what solutions that they prefer that can bring real health to the city. Again, in terms of housing, I hear a lot about, oh, we should work with...
I'm sorry, sir, I'm going to limit it to one question, please, because we don't have enough time. Next question, please. I'm going to the next row.
Can I ask questions to three of the candidates, please? Yes, one each, please. I'll start with Yvonne. There's woman power now, so I'll start with Yvonne.
Sorry, it's not one apiece. You only can ask one question.
One question, only one question?
Yes, please.
Okay, well, specifically, obviously, all of you have actually spoken about things to actually do for the city, and obviously that means that you have to spend money. You started talking about revenue. I want to know what strategies you put in place to ensure that you have the money coming in, because obviously all this you actually have to spend money.
Thank you very much. By the way, it's from the Revenue Authority, so you're not surprised about this question. Female, the lady in the third row, and I'll come to you next.
Yes, my question is regarding enforcement. I would like to know how you plan to ensure that the enforcement agency, which is the Metropolitan Police, the Freetown City Council Police, how do you plan to strengthen them to the point where they could be accountable and, push corruption aside? How can you ensure those people can enforce the law? Because enforcement is a big issue, and we want to know in detail how you can use those people to do their job.
Thank you very much. Next, the lady behind. Asma James, please.
To you all, I want to know if, don't you think we need to relocate Freetown?
How do you mean, ma'am? The whole of Freetown or the capital city?
The capital.
Okay, thank you.
Can I ask? My question has to do with education. Traditionally or historically, the metropolitan schools have played a huge role in educating the students, the primary students of Freetown, and currently are in what would be considered somewhat disadvantaged state. What would you do as mayor of Freetown, this is directed to all of them, to ensure that they continue to provide excellent service for the school children of Freetown?
That's for the municipal schools, which they are
municipal, yes.
Thank you very much.
Good evening. I'm Junisa Tony Kalon. I'm from the rural. Let me just take this opportunity to ask the organizers if they will also extend this to the rural for the chairman, the Ward C chairman. My question is directly for Papa Ray. He was talking about, in his opening, he was talking about working at the backstage. But I want to ask him, during the Ebola, what actually did he do to end the Ebola in Sierra Leone?
Thank you very much. I'll go to my right.
Good afternoon. My name is Manal Gazawi. This is quite an interesting debate. I've not heard anything about the health of our nation. And as an upcoming public health specialist, I have been asking other public health specialists from abroad that have contributed greatly in the management of the Ebola crisis in Sierra Leone. And here comes an opportunity for me to ask Madam Sawyer, how strong are we in Sierra Leone in tackling future global emerging and re-emerging infectious diseases? And since you were actively involved in the Ebola response plan, what are the lessons learned?
Thank you very much. I'm Mohammed Kane. General question for you. One issue that came up has to do with parking, and we all know it is greatly contributing to traffic in the city. And coupled with that also has to do with gang violence. How do you ensure a safe and inclusive city?
Okay, relative to parking space, right? All right, so sorry, I'll take just one more because we don't have the luxury of time here, I'm afraid. Yes, the young man there.
My name is Jason Michael. This goes to Mrs. Sawyer. If elected into that office, how sincere would you be different from your predecessors in actually relocating the slum dwellers to a safer zone without giving a thought to your supporters who may have possibly voted in that office?
Thank you very much. I'm afraid that's all we have time for right now for questions from the audience. And I'll just quickly ask the candidates to, in not more, I know it's unfair, in not more than 1 minute, try to see how they can encapsulate some of those questions having to do with them. But I just quickly want to emphasize that, well, rather public announcement that there will be refreshments after this debate, and this program is sponsored by Mercury International. I'll start with Mr. Bokari.
Waste management, of course, we have, when I served on the waste management board, we have a blueprint to keep Freetown clean. But for partisan and political reasons, they are not implemented. I believe if I'm mayor, I'll bring that blueprint to bear. Revenue generation, we have to ensure that we observe and experience real devolution. You know, what we're having right now is decentralization as it pleases State House. We want to ensure that the functions are devolved properly. When I was in the Washington Plaza Hotel, I paid for sleeping in Washington. When I was in the Meridian, Grand Meridian Hotel in Dakar, I paid for sleeping in Dakar. People are not paying for sleeping in Freetown. I think that has to be devolved to the city so that we collect tax for every night we spend in our city. The Metropolitan Police, I see the way they are treating, you know, people around is very much, you know, unfair, and I believe we need to capacitate them and ensure that, I mean, corruption is weeded out of the arrangement. They have to be properly accountable to the people of Freetown. Relocating Freetown is possible.
Building a new capital city.
Yes, well, you see,
like in Nigeria, in Ivory Coast.
I appreciate that, but as you can see, that's not a decision of the local council alone. It has to be a partnership between central government and, you know, the city council. And I appreciate an arrangement that will keep our people safe and protected. Schools and education. I believe, you know, we have taken faith-based practices out of our schools. We need to bring them back. If you're in a Catholic school, you have to learn how to pray until you become the PhD. If you're in a Muslim school, you have to do your 5 daily prayers whilst you are learning, so that we build a faith-based arrangement and sincere people who are committed to the people of Freetown and not those who want to please their political arrangement alone.
Thank you very much. Mr. Raymond de Souza George.
Well, first of all, I would like to tackle the parking question. We cannot exhaustively erase that. So I would like to start with the boys I call freelance parking agents, those who put tires in spaces to block somebody else from coming in. I think if you put those together, they form an army. And if we can put them together as a team under the employ of the council would be able to generate a lot of income from them. And they would be employed, and they would therefore take their jobs seriously. Secondly, relocation of Freetown. I think you meant relocation of the capital, because the historical essence, the historical power behind Freetown being Freetown cannot be erased. It cannot be changed. So I think you're looking at the present congestion and you're thinking about how the capital would look somewhere else. In terms of revenue generation, largely I believe we need honest brokers in that area, because taking the taxes alone, rates and taxes, if they're properly managed and we do not have these dud receipts being printed so that they deprive the council of income, I am sure we can raise a lot of income. Enforcement agency, talking about the Metropolitan Police, my simple prescription would be to have them trained, perhaps better trained, perhaps by some link program. The Freetown City Council has a twinning relationship with Hall City. And I believe Hall has a very good police force. We can depend on them. We can make links with them. Next, my Sorry?
Okay, I'll give you 30 seconds because I want a question specifically asked to you. So I'll give you 30 seconds as I will do in the case of Mrs. Akisoya.
Fine, thank you.
So the question, I'm sure you have it there.
Yes, the Ebola question. What did I do during the Ebola question? Well, I felt the impression on my spirit to come with my Ebola CD, but I neglected it. That would have answered the question because I composed songs and poems, and in that the CD was titled "It Came to Pass," and if you can contact me, you'll have a copy of that so that you know precisely what I did.
Thank you. Mrs. Akisoya?
Yes. The first question on revenue generation, own source revenue for the Freetown City Council needs to be increased. And that is a question of ensuring there's more efficiency and effectiveness in the collection. There's under collection, things like property tax. We all know, all of us sitting here, most of us have never paid property tax. Many people have never paid local taxes, other areas of revenue generation which aren't currently being utilized. Car parking, the zoning, that you pay to park. So there will be better use of the assets that the city council has. There will be improvement in the collection of taxes which are already in its domain, but there will also be the directing of capital coming from development partners, because development partners do not only work directly with local central government, they also work with local government. So it's ensuring that they prioritize their investments into council so that we're working in the same direction. With regards to the enforcement, the Freetown Metropolitan Police have had a lot of questions today, very popular this evening. Performance management, processes, supervision. Those are the things we need to do to increase their effectiveness. But not only that, there's something we should do to complement the way they work, and that is to ensure that we're also working with our local community structures. We have local tribal heads, we have chiefs. There are community structures of enforcement within the Freetown city, within Freetown, and we need to make sure that we're complementing the work of the Metropolitan Police. We cannot have thousands of them. They will not be everywhere, but we should ensure that other systems complement them in order to strengthen. Capital city relocation, my personal view, obviously it's a government decision, but my personal view would be in favor. I would be in favor of seeing the administrative capital move elsewhere and Freetown remaining as a cultural heritage city that we can really market for tourism purposes. Onto municipal schools and health. I have here a copy of my vision statement for my community, for Freetown, for progress, which really talks to, so the specific one, lessons learned. It's addressed here. We need to do more with public health education when it comes to disease prevention. The other one, which was specifically for me, was about relocating the slum dwellers. Absolutely. Where it's in a hazardous place where they need to move, they will be moved. But the point I was making, so you don't misunderstand me, is that you have to have solutions which are workable. You don't say move unless you're able to move them. So that's the point I'm making. Yes, people need to move where they're in dangerous places. People need to move where they're using up land which is necessary for the city's own development.
Thank you,
but we need to do it properly.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kisoya. The final round here is, I'm going to ask the candidates in not more than... Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, my clock beeped here. Mr. Itam, my profound apologies. Mr. Itam, I will come to you, Chief.
Mr. Moderator, I will not take that as any bias. But I want to frame my comments around two things. If Freetown City Council delivers services, quality services, to the residents of Western Area Urban effectively, people will be willing to pay reasonable prices for them. If we equip our systems, our departments adequately, they will deliver. If we pretend to pay people, they will pretend to work. Therefore, we are saying we need more resources. And I started off this evening, or this afternoon, late this afternoon, that Freetown City Council has got no reason to be poor. Over the last few years,
average revenue collection was between 14 and 16 billion leons. For this year, City Council is projecting that they will collect 22 billion leons. Simple back of the envelope calculation, by just enforcing the house rate, we could collect 52 billion in 1 year. That's more than double. Without changing the rate, just making sure people pay what they owe. So we have no reason to be poor. We could finance all the services I just described. School, there's no point telling me school is free when the parents have got to pay from chalk to broom. There's no point telling me school is free when even after somebody has passed an exam and got the mark, they've got to make a donation to school. There's no point telling me that health facilities is free when you go to the hospital and all the doctors do is to refer you to their clinic. We need to take charge. We need to take these services back. We need to produce.
Chief Judge, sir, in connection with revenue collection, I think we have to put models in place. If I happen to be the mayor, I will have to build an office, let's say, Lumley. They will have their own area to collect revenue, local tax, and also the house tax. Then you go up to Clock Tower. That will stop the wastages and also the fraud taken in at the city council. Because of the lack of people working in the council, they are not having enough staff. They are not having enough staff. Most of them are not working. They just go down to relax most of the time. So we'll have to put all those things in place so that the revenue will see it properly. Then also, to control the payment of revenue, should be paid into the bank, to open a bank account, have a bank system for the revenues to be paid in there. I think that's what I have to say.
Thank you very much, Chief Judge. And the final rounds, I'm going to keep the time for this one because we are running, in fact, we are way behind time. I'm going to ask each of the candidates, starting from the opposite direction, in not more than 1 minute, to tell us their closing remarks, their final selling points. Why should somebody in this audience or watching or listening to you vote for you? Chief Judge King, sir.
My closing remarks. I pray to the Almighty God for us, Freetown, to think wisely and to vote for Chief Judge Sungu King for the mayoral seat in the municipality. I pray that we also will keep the peace during this election so that we have a well and true election. We want to thank you all.
Thank you very much, Mr. Samuel Itam.
Thank you. I think from this discussion we've had today, nobody has got monopoly over the challenges. We all see them. Nobody has got monopoly over possible solution. Good ideas have come from everybody. The challenge is who do you believe could deliver? We've had over 10 years of APC. 10 years. And they have not done anything. I don't believe that APC mayor would never even room to implement the necessary policy we need to transform to a modern metropolitan city. We need now Freetown experience and expertise. That is what I bring on the table. We need people who could connect. We want genuine partnership with international people to bring expertise. That we could do.
Thank you very much,
Not, sir, not in terms of begging, but in terms of genuine partnership.
Thank you very much, sir.
We can do it, and of course, we deliver.
Mr. Itam, thank you very much, sir. Mrs. Yvonne Akisoya.
I believe that I'm the right person to do this job for two reasons. Because I have the expertise, I have the experience, I have the international connections that have just been mentioned, but in addition to that, I have the passion which has been demonstrated by a track record of delivery over the past 20 years. With regards to the party that I represent, this is a party under which the work that I did in Ebola, the work that we did in President's Recovery Priorities, the work we did in Operation Clean Freetown went on unfettered and supported. I have every confidence that if I'm given the ticket, if I win the election to be the next mayor of Freetown City, we will transform our city. We will make this a destination city that we can all be proud of. One in which services are delivered, one in which hope is given, one in which all of us can work together to see the Freetown and the future that we deserve. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Mr. Raymond Da Souza George. Mr. Raymond Da Souza George.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I believe that Freetown needs God-fearing leadership, and Freetown must be a God-fearing society. That's one. And I want to say that considering my service, since I was a small boy, up to now, I've not been paid for my services. Now I have an opportunity to come onto the table to work and be paid for the work I'm doing. And finally, I would like to say to all of you, we are all here campaigning for your votes. I would like you to go out and vote according to your conscience. Whether it's for me or not, we can only change this country by voting. So my appeal to you would be, get up, make up your mind, go out and vote.
Thank you very much, sir. Ensa Bokari.
Thank you very much. The solution to the challenges facing Freetown is to invest in building a sincere platform for all to engage and participate in the interests of the people of Freetown, creating the environment for equal opportunity and the fear of Allah. We can only achieve this by electing Honorable Alhaji Musa Tarwali President and Bokari Ensa Mayor of Freetown City. You have given the opportunity to APC, SLPP1 and SLPP2 for over 56 years. But here are we. Here are they again presenting to you their same wine in a different bottle. They can fool some people some of the time, but they cannot fool all the people all the time. The APC and SLPP have established a taboo that they have a permanent base of fanatic followers. This fragile hope gives them the license to keep failing and failing and expect an unbroken loyalty from you. So for the mayorship of Freetown, I can encourage you to vote yours sincerely, Bokari Ensa.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you. Thank you, Ensa Bokari of the CDP, Yvonne Akisoya of the APC, Raymond Da Souza George of the SLPP, Samuel Itam of the NGC, and Chief George Songo King of the C4C. Thank you all for watching. Thank you. Thanks to Sierra Eye Magazine for organizing this, and to the Institute for Governance Reform for co-organizing this event. Thank you to Mercury International for funding this, and I wish you all the best. Long live Sierra Leone. Bye-bye.